Hey, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Frank About Health right here on talkradio.nyc, as well as on our Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Twitch.tv platforms. Welcome to all of you. Today, I bring my dear friend and special guest, Danielle Swanson. We will be talking about something other than epilepsy today. Who would have thought? But exactly. Either way, it's good because we're going to be changing things up a bit for a very good reason. And that is about how we all need to learn to create change for the quality of our mental health. So that's what this episode is about. A lot of our discussion is going to be organic in nature. We're going to talk about issues that are affecting us today in society that people are hearing about in the news. We're going to talk about hot topics like change and artificial intelligence. And we're also just going to look at how it has changed the way we act, work, live, think, feel, relate to each other, and want to see the impact it is creating in our mental health and the way we interact with each other in a post COVID world. Now, that all being said, I do normally issue my disclaimer. I'll do it out of formality. Just remember that this is not a direct medical issue, so there'll be no concerns or information shared that will make you go running to your doctor to change your treatment protocol. We don't want you to do that unless you have any advice or consultation with your neurologist, psychologist, therapist, specialist, whoever you're seeing, because it is really your job to be concerned of your medical care and to take the information that we share on Frank About Health as food for thought, not as the be all end all. So, our disclaimer really is any information that you get from today's discussion between myself and Danielle, hopefully it will engage you in having further discussion with us, either in the live chat box if you want to make any comments or ask any questions, or when we close the show, we're going to announce something that Danielle is involved in where you'll be able to hear more of her comments at a later date. Okay, that all being said, Danny, welcome back to Frank About Health. Unmute yourself and say hello.
Well, thank you for having me back on the show, Frank. This is exciting.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Especially because, like what I was saying, we're for the first time in a long time. I mean, everyone knows by now that you've been on the show with myself, and of course on these shows that we've done with Jeff. We've been talking about epilepsy conditions and epilepsy changes, but we're epilepsy in itself. The only one constant in this particular episode is that we've had to learn to adapt to changes at many different points in our life, almost forced to live as change is the norm, sometimes so rapid and so unexpected that that became the norm for us, while most people would probably be frozen solid and not know how to adapt. And I think we become experts in how to even see the changes that are going out there in our society today and how sometimes it looks so confusing. But I notice I seem to take a back seat and observe it and try to reflect on it. I gather you're doing the same thing as well, correct?
Yeah. I notice a lot of people, like in my own family, in my own like friend groups, a lot of people are really uncomfortable with change. It's very like scary to them or like frustrating, or I think it just brings up a lot of emotions for people. And that's, I think, normal. Which is kind of crazy because I think there's even a saying, and it's a very true saying, like life is change, right? Just everything that only the only constant is change. And
Exactly.
that's real. So like yeah, I agree with the epilepsy stuff. I think that has been, like you said, for me also like a tool of just programming me to be very adaptable to change. Like if you told me I needed to pick up and move myself to Norway tomorrow, I'd be like, okay, why? But okay, like I would just start packing stuff and figure it out. Uh,
Exactly.
but
You know,
other people, I think, would be like, "What? I don't want to move to Norway. Why are you trying to make me to move? What am I going to do? Where am I going to go?" I feel like that's
exactly.
more of maybe a common reaction where I just be like, "Okay,
Let's put it from a neurological perspective. I mean, or maybe it's a psychological one. Our personality, our brain, is basically driven to live in the moment. And we have our history that we build from childhood all the way to when we become adults. And we have the unknown future that we always try to plan for, whether it's career wise or personally, or you want to buy a new house, or you want to travel somewhere, or you want to have your big birthday party, or you want to plan your wedding, or whatever. Now, being that we live in a spectrum, right? The thing is that I think society along the way, under different circumstances, whether it's the political environment, the media, um, climate change, or even COVID, it just changed the dynamics of our environment and therefore tried to reprogram us all as human beings that are wired to interact and wired to connect. But we therefore lose sight of the moment. And we, as such, learn it's either the past or the future and nothing in between. There are the people who can't tolerate the gray area. They're the extreme thinkers, the extreme, it has to be my way or no way, or the highway, or whatever the analogy is. And there are those that are also, uh, I don't know what the right word is. I don't want to say subservient. They like to watch other people take charge, and they just want to sit back and watch and just react accordingly. But either way is still not healthy because you lose a sense of yourself, a sense of your ego, your confidence, your esteem, your sense of focus. You lose, you don't know how to decide things anymore. You have constant frenetic energy in your life. And then people then living in that life, they really are saying we want to stay constant and we don't want to create change because it's the only peace I know. Right? And so the irony for people like us that have had to deal with neurological events in strange places, or all of a sudden you lose an hour and don't know why, or you've had to have side effects, stitches, bruises, cuts, doctor visits, emergency rooms, whatever. By default, okay, I'll just go. And the irony is, the more frequent it is, it becomes a norm, so that when you observe other people undergoing simple changes, you're like, okay, I can deal with that.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
yeah, so everyone, however, while we're all interacted or interconnected, we are still all individuals. So I've always said that if you have an understanding of what your goals are, and look at your goals as not hard stops or hardcore things that must be achieved. They're goals that can be overlooked or canceled out or changed around based on the past and where you've come from, knowing what you don't want to do or knowing what you want to advance from. And then looking at your moment now, which are your resources, your friends, your family, any other, as they say, connections or support mechanisms that are out there, and try to work collectively with the past, present, and future at the same time. I think they call that, in simple terms, resiliency, or they call that the ability to be adaptable and flexible and go with the flow mentality. But we also have so many restrictions in our society, economic, political, and others, that almost prevent us from being our natural selves. So I think that even no matter how much we strive to adapt to change and again get away from keeping ourselves restricted in the past, we're still, even as we're living relatively normal, healthy lives, we're still going to be, dealing with a lot of pushback and a lot of uncertainty and whatever. So I think that what we want to try to focus on today's show are maybe some solutions, some techniques that we can draw from during those moments as we're observing them or living them. And then at least have a balance. Just strike a relative balance of calm, even if things are pissing you off or things are making you ecstatic, but you don't want to overshare your joy. You just want to be able to live a balance and share it as much as you can and create that, what I would say, that balance, that homeostasis, you know, of relaxation and go with the flow. I think we've all had to learn new ways of doing what we were originally programmed to do to begin with. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, that's just my take.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think also just we live in a world that is, I don't know if it's always been very stressful, but it's definitely gotten more stressful, I think. And they say what, like 80% of illnesses and disease and mental health stuff is a result, direct result of stress or is caused by stress.
Right.
And I know a lot of times like change can be stressful, and that's why people either avoid it or like they say they hate it. And I was just thinking about what you said about how some people are like very take charge and some people are a little maybe more passive and like just let someone else do it. Because I know I think I've been both. I think sometimes I tend to err on the side of being a little more passive sometimes when everything around me feels too stressful. I'm like, I
Right.
can't handle this right now. Someone else do it. Like, I don't mind if it changes, just don't make me make the decision. And I think that, every now and then I think that's not a bad thing, but I do think it would be, I think we tend to forget that we can take charge and make decisions for our own life. And if the more we take ownership of our own lives and decisions, kind of like you were saying, we can reclaim our sense of self. And I think ultimately the happier we can be when we make our own decisions and get more comfortable with change. I don't know if it'll ever be fully, sit on your couch and watch Netflix comfortable. But,
So that was COVID time.
yeah, we're in a different time now. But
Yes, good.
I lost my train of thought with that, but there you go.
No, you're on point. I mean, the thing is that I think that I've heard all over the place on well, not just social media, but on shows like The View and on the news, and even on shows like Grey's Anatomy, which I must say was my COVID show to watch. I watched I think at that time, just 15 or 16 seasons in 3 weeks. I didn't even watch a show before. I mean, it aired in 2005, and my first time watching it was 2017. I mean, I'm sorry, 2020. But the thing is that what I'm trying to say is that in all of those platforms, they were pointing out that COVID was a spotlight on what was wrong and fractured and broken and need focus on, including within ourselves. And so it was both, a curse because people died, but yet it was a blessing because it created inventions such as the mRNA vaccine, or it created a new way of communicating, Zoom, right? Or it also created innovation in other areas of industry. So
Kind of pushed
we
us to
see the
change.
growth of, I'm sorry, what? Say that again?
Kind of pushed us to change.
It did, and we actually did need that. We did, because unfortunately we were at a point in our our country's administration where we were going to change in the opposite direction, and we were glad that COVID came along and pushed us to change in the right direction. Again, that's just my opinion. Don't want to hear any hate mail on that. But the thing is that from the perspective of always having a sense of what our needs are for ourselves, we were also losing sight of that. And I think what will make anyone adaptable or learn to become more adaptable in dealing with change will be reclaiming our sense of our priorities and our vision for our life. And then also use our past traumas and experiences to help us if they can, while also not looking at our goals for the future as hard and fast and can be changeable or adaptable to fit the circumstances at the time. We're about to take our first break. So when we return, let's you and I together talk about two key things that I think you and I both already hinted on that have been main drivers of change and how people have been responding to it. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, right here on Frank About Health, both Danielle and I will be back in a couple minutes after these messages. But in the meantime, if you are on our Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, or Twitch.tv platforms and you have any thoughts on the subject for today's episode, just chat away. Let us know. We're live, and we'll be back in a few. See you soon.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business, or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
What really drives success in business? Introducing Intangify, the show that explores the intangible assets that create value and growth. I'm Matthew Asbell, your host and an attorney focused on innovation. Join me Fridays at noon Eastern to discover how innovation, culture, and other intangibles shape thriving companies from startups to established businesses. We'll share strategies to unleash your business's true potential. Tune in live on talkradio.nyc Fridays at noon Eastern and Intangify your business today.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back. So, Danny, what would you say post-COVID now, let's say beginning in March of this year, has been the most continual change that has been affecting all of us? Although all of us have stopped wearing masks and we've stopped keeping distance and we've been going out there and being social again, what would you say has still been an upheaval for all of us so far? Unmute.
Sorry. I don't think there's any
No
clear
problem.
lines time-wise, but I think definitely this sort of ongoing and increasingly concerning biggest point of change would be that, like, climate change itself, right? The climate crisis. Whether you believe humans contribute to it or not, I'm not here to discuss that part. I don't really care. There's a great principle that Jack Canfield teaches. If anyone knows who he is, he was, I think, like on The Secret. He's the guy who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. He's written a million books. He's awesome. But he has this principle that he teaches called act as if. And the other one is taking responsibility, 100% responsibility for your life. So I love those two. And the reason I bring them up is because, we've had all these crazy in Canada, like it almost looks like the whole country's on fire. There's so many wildfires. And I know you guys in New York got it pretty bad. Like, I don't know if that was a month ago now. I've lost track of time.
It was
I'm
just
in Boston.
yesterday.
Yeah, we got it recently.
As well as a month ago.
The big one that was like orange all day long for like 3 days.
Yes.
We got it here in Boston too. I think it was a little less extreme, maybe because there's not as much pollution to begin with here as New York City. I'm not sure.
Right.
But my point being, and they're kind of used to that more out like in California because it's more prone to fires and there's mudslides. Like there's just a lot of things that's been happening over the years, but increasingly, like this year especially, seems like a lot, right? There's the fires. I think we were talking yesterday about down in Florida, the temperature on land is hot, but the ocean is something, I forget if it was like 85 or 90 something degrees. Like the water itself is hot.
Well, the water and the land were about the same, like I think a degree apart.
Damn.
Like 94 on land, 93 in the water. And that was in the Florida Keys area.
Yeah.
That's what I had seen. I think it was Good Morning America I was watching, and they were saying that, in addition to that, they were saying that the last 15 days were the hottest days on the planet on record.
On record. Yeah. In Arizona, it's been like 118 degrees for a week or more straight now, something like that.
Yes.
Anyway, I bring that up because I know with the hot ocean water, that creates more of a friendly environment for hurricanes. So I don't know if that's happening, but that's obviously many big changes happening in nature, right? But that also affects our daily lives, especially in the United States. I think we're having one of the hottest summers collectively that we've been
Right.
having maybe ever.
Mhm.
And a lot of the things we do to keep cool just aren't set up for that. Like,
Right.
and the more this goes on, the less set. I don't know the words I'm looking for. The less prepared we are for it. We're not prepared for this. We've had
Right.
all the warnings, but we've done very little to actually prepare and deal with it. My AC went out like a week ago, and it's been 90 degrees inside my house. So that's been fun. But
Plenty of water, I hope.
yes, all the water. Yeah,
Yes.
it's actually been colder outside sometimes than inside. But my point to that being that we need to learn how to get used to changes and to start thinking about what we can do to adapt, because this isn't stopping anytime soon.
Right.
So for now, like for instance, with the AC, I'm just like, all right, I guess I'll just open my windows and have a fan on, and fingers crossed that my body adapts to being hot. I don't know how that works evolutionarily. Normally those changes I feel like take hundreds or millions of years. We're gonna
Could
see.
be.
But yeah, I don't know. What are the examples that come to your mind with the climate change
Well,
stuff?
I think you're pretty much hitting all of the points, because I remember originally it was around the time of June, or I think around mid-June, when you saw there was a hot zone around the Texas area going into going tipping into Arizona, going into Georgia, stuff like that. And then it expanded out, going to Las Vegas and California, and then all the way up to the Virginia coast, and of course Florida. But the Northeast was always a little bit cooler, 80s, whatever, Yet we experienced Canadian forest fires, which in my lifetime, I don't remember Canadian forest fires.
I don't
Maybe
either.
30 years ago? I don't know. I always think, well, not having been to Canada, unfortunately, for the last 20 years, I think it's been since I was last up there. Um, I always thought there was like a block of ice or something, but of course they're saying the polar caps are melting, so probably there's no more ice there, and they're experiencing our temperatures or whatever. And of course, I do know that on the West Coast, but not just California, but Washington State, when those forest fires come fast and furious, a lot of it could be man-made campers that light a match and they don't blow it out before they drop it. But a lot of it is the sun rays going through and literally beaming down and creating the fire, especially when they're out of control and they need pretty much
There hasn't been enough rain. Yeah.
that also with the droughts that have been going on in the desert basin. So the thing is that I would say that when you hear the stories of not just what New York has been receiving with the Canadian forest fires, and what Florida's getting with land versus water temperature, and then all the heat stuff going on, that's not just the United States. It's happening in Europe too. So it's just that the reason why I'm bringing the whole spectrum of everything you pointed out into a bigger picture is because this shows that most people, even though they're warned constantly, they don't take it seriously because they haven't seen it happen. So it's the unknown that doesn't get people to get ready for change. They like to lie in their comfort zone. And maybe that's a resistance and not a resiliency that people have learned to accept, maybe because of the way they were brought up, maybe because of their past traumas, maybe because of their culture, meaning the way their government is running their country. Again, I'm talking globally now, not just the United States.
Well, I think the other thing too is when I know for me, for instance, right, when I hear about all these crazy things happening, right, a few years ago, the Australian wildfires, and last year, I think there was like a crazy floods happening in Belgium and China, and right, just a lot of things going on. I get very overwhelmed and like anxious, and I have to kind of distract myself and maybe even go into like a world of escapism to not get like depressed about it, because as individuals, it feels like, oh my God, well, what can I do? Like, I voted and nothing happened. So
But you're actually touching upon something though. And this is what I mean. the fact that you had a reaction of helplessness and depression and what can I do means that there's a part of you that wants to do something.
Right.
I don't know if it's the flight or fight response in this case, because you're not running away from the crisis yourself, but you're observing your community at large, the human race, going through their difficulties, and you want to do what you can to help stop it. But we then get restricted because of the way our limited resources, our lack of money, lack of knowledge, lack of connections that you can call to actually make things change. But the thing is these are the extremes that I was talking about at the beginning part of the show that most people unfortunately learn. And therefore, when something starts like this threat of climate change, we're not talking 10 or 20 years from now anymore. We're probably talking 2 or 3 years. That's my take. And I think being in COVID may have served as an advantage to bring awareness to things, but it served as a disadvantage because it kept us literally in a bubble where we weren't thinking beyond the boundaries of our home. So we can't think about the big picture of what's going to happen to our planet when we're just trying to make sure what's going to happen if I get COVID.
Right.
Another
thing COVID did is that when we were in quarantine and there was no more, they stopped all the flights, all the trains, all the cars, everything. Suddenly in India and all these places, you could see the Himalayas again. I know where I live, I've never seen the sky that clear in the city before. It was beautiful. The air, I even felt like the air smelled sweeter. I don't know if you guys had that, if you were able to notice it in like places like New York, but I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Well, I did notice that when we locked down, I think it was the 22nd of March, 2020, for like 5 months in New York, and the whole city was barren. But they had showed satellite photos of the climate getting cleaner, and even the Venice lakes in Italy being green, or like
I remember that they were all over the world. There was things happening where the climate was just like the earth was like healing itself, if you will, like cleaning itself up. And
right, exactly. So it implies that man-made, while we're living our lives, or man unfortunately is abusing its planet and its own environment out of lack of awareness, lack of insight as to that they actually have an important role in how the rest of the world reacts, or the rest of the environment reacts.
I think a lot of people feel disempowered too, because I think there's a lot of awareness, and I think a lot of people do want to do something about whatever this is, but there's a feeling of like, well, I don't feel empowered to do anything, and it's just, I think, is the feeling of frustration, and that's a more challenging type of change.
Yeah, so overall, while we have pointed out since the beginning of the show, and we're about to take our second break, as we have pointed out, people are either lack of resilient, or they're resistant, or they're extreme, they're passive, or they're more aggressive or hyper aggressive, or whatever. We're still talking about how that middle ground is the big focus of fear that people have. And in order to maintain our mental health, we have to face that fear, engage in that fear, embrace that fear. And I think when we return, let's spend segment 3 talking about solutions and how to do it. All right. Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned right here on Frank About Health, as myself and Danielle will be back, and we'll talk about solutions towards creating change for the betterment of our mental health. All right, we'll be back in a few.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be Frank About Health to advocate for all of us.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hey there. Right now, Danielle and I are going to talk about solutions and how to deal with making changes in our lives to help with our mental health and to help with just our physical health. As she said earlier, that a lot of the stress that we're under sometimes can trigger a lot of health ailments that we have, whether they are, major illnesses like cancer or diabetes or even like I know I was born with epilepsy and it had its onset when I was a teenager, but there are those that we have covered on the past that have suffered post-traumatic epilepsy due to other accidents and carelessness and not seeing where they were crossing the street or whatever the circumstances were going to be. And of course, that injury led to seizure activity. Again, this is not an epilepsy-oriented episode, but the point is the lesson learned already is that in order for any of us to live a comfortable life, dealing with change, watching other people go through crises, and make our recommendations to those that if we can, we have to be mindful of the use of this friend up here called our brain, our knowledge, our resources, our past experiences, our traumas, our medications if necessary, and just our instincts and being able to take a role where you feel you have a place. Like Danielle mentioned in the last segment, she was observing about different things in the media of people going through fires and stuff like that and how she wanted to help and didn't know how to do it. Again, she was limited in her resources, but she had the right mindset and the right intention. And it is that kind of awareness that we all need in dealing with change going forward, whether it's on the societal level or whether it's in your own personal backyard. So I think one of the aspects of this segment is to discuss about different solutions that we can all try to do in our own life. I mean, one solution I've tried, which I gather if you've been watching for the last 2 years, is this podcast, Frank About Health. My focus of being open, being frank about health is to make people aware you have your own voice. You have your own choices. No matter what your doctors have said, no matter what your family has said, no matter what society has said. And especially during COVID, when we were getting the divide of what is real and what isn't, you still had your ability to make your own choices. And as we've been talking about during the last half hour, a lot of people don't know when to use or make those choices. And hopefully now we'll be able to come up with some options.
Yeah. I think the biggest obstacle, I think, for most people, especially since we were talking about climate change, is I think that feeling of overwhelm or disempowerment. So obviously there's no single person that can like wave a magic wand and fix it all, or even if like someone like Jeff Bezos, who has all the money in the world, I do think if he spent it on different things that could be helpful, but not go there today. But I don't think just a ton of money is necessarily going to solve the problem either, not all in one swoop. So my point to that is, I think what we have to do is find ways, like you said, start talking about it more, have conversations, like normalize these kinds of conversations, not just like in a despairing way, like, oh man, there's nothing I can do, wah, wah, wah. Like that's not going to be productive.
No.
Hasn't changed anything so far, still not going to change anything in the future. But I think if we can have discussions on, okay, well, what can I do? We can start to take action. I know for people who are in more rural areas or like the suburbs, there might be more direct action they can take. Like, for instance, my dad lives in the suburbs. He has a garden. I encouraged him to start planting more like native species to New England because that's where he lives.
Right.
And he also has a butterfly garden for the butterflies that pass through New England on their migratory route. And so certain times of year, there's all these butterflies and hummingbirds in his yard. It might not seem like a big thing, but it actually, like, every little bit helped. Like if everyone had a little butterfly garden or like grew their own food, if they have the opportunity, that does something.
Right.
In the city, which is where I am, kind of city bound, it's, I think, harder to make those changes.
Yes.
More direct
Exactly.
changes. But I know in a lot of cities there's more and more talk and pushes for amongst communities, like having community gardens, so that, and that's not just like a climate thing, but that's also like you can grow your own food and share with each other and reduce the cost of living, really, if you can grow your own tomatoes, right?
But it sounds like
Beyond
your father's relating with his community. He's relating with nature, and he's doing his best to make his part of the world not just livable, but making everyone in his community happy along the way as well, including the butterflies, including the plants, including the organic creatures that live among us. I mean, it's that kind of engagement that people need to learn from.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's two things came to me at once there.
Oh, sure.
I think, first of all, just before I forget, there's an excellent book for more suggestions on like how to help with climate change stuff called Breeding Sweetgrass by Robin. Oh God, I forgot her middle name. It's Robin Kimmerer, I think is her name. I'll look it up for you guys for the end of the podcast. But
Yes.
she's got some really great solutions and really great stories. It's just an awesome book. That's not a paid advertisement. That's just my brain working how it does. I think most of us, though, we don't have our own houses, most of us, or a lot of us live in the city. So if you can't plant a full-on butterfly garden, you right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is that it's just that on one level, as we were saying earlier, COVID made everyone more self-aware of their role in trying to help maintain the pandemic, but it made people less aware of how it was affecting other communities that they did not have direct connection to. And now we're back in the open world. And when we have the overall climate changing, people are now relying on things like artificial intelligence to be able to, again, solve it or take it out of my hands. People are more comfortable in relinquishing their power, partially because they don't know they have it. And second, if they were alerted to having it, they're not sure how to use it. So I think, if anything, podcasts like Frank About Health, or even using artificial intelligence intelligently and in a constructive way, can assist us all in being able to get back up to speed with dealing with our planet and dealing with our communities. And therefore, even just in the act of giving and supporting, that makes us feel more alive, more energetic, more charged up, more
I think that
positive
would be a great
about things.
use of AI would be to, like, I think you're right on there. Like, that would be a great use of it, is to like have AI start to investigate both how individuals and in the big picture can solve or make changes to combat climate change or reverse it, right?
Yes.
Obviously, there's a lot of concern around AI. I know I'm going off topic a little bit, but
No, you're not, because one thing we have to make mention of is that I know that you and I spoke before the show, not just of the actors and writers strike, but this morning I heard that Broadway is about to go on strike too.
I was
Now,
wondering,
they were voting today.
if that was going to happen, because they are also part of the creative community, is what I like to say. Because I'm just, full disclaimer, I'm in full support of this strike. I don't belong to SAG. I'm not an actor or like a Hollywood writer or anything like that, but full support over here. But I think it's something that needs to be talked about even more.
Yes.
Not just with climate change, but because if you guys haven't, if no one has listened to Fran Drescher's speech, hers is, of the ones that I have listened to, hers is, I think, my favorite so far, but she makes a good point. She's like, we just want to make sure that we're still going to have jobs and protections from AI, because this AI can just take our voices and our thoughts and they can take the writer's ideas and just create new things, but basically using us in like, it's a kind of form of
even our image and likeness.
Yes. And it's kind of a form of like creative theft, basically. And they're very concerned they might be put out of work, and rightly so. But I think the other reason we need to bring attention to this is because it's not just people in the creative fields. It's not just writers and actors and performers. I think sooner or later that's going to penetrate all of our work, all of our jobs, even podcasts. Like, we're getting close there.
But yeah, I mean, the thing of the matter is where the continuum is that AI is both a threat and an opportunity. Yep. But the human being ourselves, we can't passively allow it to take over, or we can't be too controlling of it, which is the whole argument in the strike. It's still an example of how that middle ground of understanding AI's influence and how we can work with AI rather than it work on us, or it needs to be learned. There needs to be a new education platform developed somewhere. I don't know in what form.
Maybe some boundaries around it or something. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, again, as far as for those Broadway viewers out there, still come to New York, because the actors will not be striking. It's mainly the lighting people, the catering people, the production designers, those people. Of course, it could spill over, but Actors Equity, which is the union that looks at Broadway, is not going on strike. I haven't even heard rumors of it. But the big threat, which is why that's another example of dealing with industry change, cultural change to our society. Our travel industry will be affected.
Right.
If they're globally, right? I mean, well, I don't know how the international Broadway audience would be affected.
Oh no,
by
not
that.
Just Broadway, but I meant AI globally.
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely globally. So it's just, again, whether we're talking about climate change, talking about AI, talking about the past with COVID, or even talking about our individual past with living with epilepsy, change is a constant. Change cannot be resisted. People need to learn resiliency. People, whether you have a disability or not, have to know that you have a voice. You need to own your power. You need to own your mind. You need to own your thoughts. You need to combat fear, use it as a strength, not as something to defeat you. We all together have to live whether it's a post-COVID world or just living in the new century or the next year coming, 2024. We all have to be able to own what's going on, not just around us, but around our community. And that in itself will create better mental health and awareness.
I think it highlights more than ever that we need to clearly define what we want and who we are. Right. I think that it's, like you said, it's just empowering ownership, like define what it is you want so that we can create these boundaries or whatever it is we need to do with these changes.
Exactly. And before we go into our final break, I just want to say a palindrome that's come to my mind recently is, the word own, O-W-N? Well, there's K-N-O-W, which is know. When you know, you own. All right. That just came to my mind actually in the last 10 minutes. Maybe that's my own instincts operating, but I want to say that most people who own their activities for better mental health is because they know their strengths. So I think that might be the centerpiece, the middle of the road that most people can engage with. And therefore we can deal with all of these conflicts that have been going on and that will continue to go on, and be more balanced about it going forward. All righty. Okay, we're ready for our next break. So, ladies and gentlemen, right here on talkradio.nyc, our YouTube channel, please join YouTube. Get all your friends to listen to this show. It'll be ready as soon as we end at 6 o'clock, as well as twitch.tv, Twitter, LinkedIn. Come join us in the next segment. We'll be back in a few.
What really drives success in business? Introducing Intangify, the show that explores the intangible assets that create value and growth. I'm Matthew Asbell, your host and an attorney focused on innovation. Join me Fridays at noon Eastern to discover how innovation, culture, and other intangibles shape thriving companies from startups to established businesses. We'll share strategies to unleash your business's true potential. Tune in live on talkradio.nyc Fridays at noon Eastern and intangify your business today.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hey everybody, I didn't say at the beginning of the show, this is the end of my current season of episodes of Frank About Health. I want to thank everybody who's enjoyed listening to the various shows that I've done over the last 12 weeks. Many of them have been with Danielle right here at the NYU Langone Health System. Currently, I'm at NYU's Grossman School of Medicine and their cafeteria that has given me the space to talk with all of you with nice greenery in the background and create a whole cultural feel. It's been a combination of change going on, as we've been talking about on the show, where I had spent the first year and a half or so at the WeWork location at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which I found it to be very, very helpful in the beginning of setting up Frank About Health. But as I've been developing in a post-COVID world, the platform going forward, I took it for the last 12 weeks at the NYU Langone system because we had Mental Health Awareness Month. We had our epilepsy shows. I was able to also be a healthcare correspondent for our host, Matthew Asbell's Intangify. And also I was able to just set up the stage to really talk about a lot of healthcare issues that affect the brain, whether they're psychological, neurological, or otherwise. And I just wanted to say I will be taking a 2-week hiatus and repositioning the show even forward. I've talked regularly about my relationship with Hilton Hotels. I'm promising a lot of big things in the fall, and I will just keep it private until that time comes because don't want to create any expectations. I do want to create enthusiasm for Danielle, though, because she herself has been very instrumental. She was on my first show in 2016 right here on Talk Radio NYC, as well as my comeback show at the end of May 2021. And I thought she would be the best person to wrap up this current season with. And she's moving on to her own podcast. I'd like to now talk about that podcast because it's relevant to our topic today. And well, I guess the first thing I'll do is I will show your headshot, and then Danny, just take over and talk about the show and what you're going to be offering your audience.
Yeah, thank you for that kind introduction, Frank.
You're very welcome.
It's fun being on your show, and that's part of what inspired me to start my own podcast, actually. So yep, there I am. So the name of my podcast is Comfortable Change. It's really only one episode has come out so far, but there will be more to come pretty soon, starting with every other week. But yeah, basically I decided to call it Comfortable Change because there is a lot of things that I would like to talk about and that I feel are important. And the idea, I think, of change just kind of allows room for that.
Yes, and absolutely.
Yeah, the first episode, I just kind of introduce myself a little bit, but then I do kind of tell an anecdote about one of the first yoga classes I ever took was actually a Korean style of yoga. So I don't know if you can still qualify it as yoga or not, but it was really cool, but it was not what I was expecting. So there's a whole story behind that about the mental changes I had to make in order to actually like accept what I was learning, instead of be like, this is stupid, why am I learning this? 'Cause there's that like child inside my mind being like, this is dumb, this is weird, why am I like, all those voices that kind of talk to us like that. So I was about 20 or 21 years old at the time when I first decided to take a yoga class.
Yeah.
Voice in my head that was like kind of whiny or whatever, very skeptical.
Yeah.
But it actually turned out to be one of the best practices that I have done. It actually helped me a lot with the seizures, as I've shared with Frank, and I think I've shared it maybe on one of our previous shows together.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so we'll be talking, about things like climate change and AI, but also there's a lot of other things. It's pretty much wide open. I've got
Yes.
some fun episodes planned. But I'm also open to having guests. That's my next goal. I've got some people scheduled, but Frank being one of them.
I will be there. Just name the date.
If you want more information or you would like to get the updates, I do have on Instagram, my handle's just comfortable change, and there's that same picture there. And then I just created a TikTok for my podcast. It's called Comfortable Change Podcast. I don't really know what I'm going to do with that. There's literally nothing on there yet, but it just seems like a fun thing to do. So yeah, if anyone out there is like, hey, I want to be on a podcast and talk about some kind of change or something you guys want to talk about, you can DM me, or I will be putting my email for the podcast up in the on both social media platforms.
So if they wanted to go find you, they just go into Spotify and search the word comfortable change, or they search for your name?
You can just search for comfortable change and just look for that picture, basically.
Cool.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I like the direction you're taking it, because if anything, it served at the same time as, like I said, a lesson where we as patients living with epilepsy have learned to adapt to the unforeseen, unexpected. Wow, I got a fly that's trying to make me adapt to the end of the show. I'm just kidding. The thing is that we don't want to be labeled, oh, we're the epileptic speaker. We are people who are actually experts in dealing with constant change. We just want to make it comfortable for everybody else to learn how to live with change as well. And that's why I thought it was very fitting for us to talk on today's episode about the two major change factors that are going on in our society today, coupled with the strikes of the various creative unions that are actually, showing the impact that it has on our society and our culture. If we don't know a way of being able to negotiate that middle ground that all of us can be happy with and therefore be more at peace with, that is the lesson that we can all learn from. And then I gather your podcast will touch upon the various levels of change that one can do, whether it's health related, environmentally related, professionally related, or even, like you mentioned, the yoga as a starting point. You're able to show that you took the initiative, and that's what we're trying to tell everyone out there. When they're seeing change and they feel helpless, take the initiative, even if it's just taking that first step out the door, or the day when you take your mask off for the first time and get used to it. We find that we actually can deal with change much better if we allow it rather than feel threatened by it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us, and this is actually one of the things I learned through that yoga experience, is that most of us have a lot of preconceptions about a lot of different things. Like, as kids, like maybe 5 years and younger, we're like wide open to the world. We're open to everything, like no preconceptions, just like cool, let's do anything. But the more we learn and observe behaviors from other people, and I think especially as adults, we start to get really fixated or in like fixed mindsets. But if we can kind of break through those preconceptions, I think that can help us a lot with making changes in our lives and make those hopefully more comfortable, if at least tolerable, if nothing else.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, like what you say about children when they grow up and they go about life very resiliently and very optimistically, and then all of a sudden as they get older they start to waver and they get cautious and whatever. A lot of that is never really owning outright their own will or their own sense of litmus test, not reality testing. to whatever they're hearing, even if it's from parents or their teachers or the bullies on the playground or whatever the situation may be. If your individual personality is designed to take a look at it as data rather than the weapon and learn how to balance the two, that would be where they are ahead of the game rather than where we are now at this point in our lives where we're still learning to reacclimate. And that's fine because I think both of us have learned from our own limitations how to be more adaptable, more resilient. And I think I could speak firsthand doing this podcast for the last 2.5 it's been 87 shows. That's over 2 years. But the thing is, doing it on talkradio.nyc has been a grounding effect for me. So I'm looking forward to not only being a guest on your show, but just seeing the success that I know you'll make of your show on Spotify.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's going to be on all the platforms. It's on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's on iHeartRadio. There's a whole bunch of other ones. There's a link on my Instagram account where at Linktree or whatever opens it up for you. So wherever you listen to it, type it in, click the link, do the thing, you'll find it.
Awesome. Well, we have 1 minute to end. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for being with me and Danielle on today's episode of Frank About Health. Tomorrow's slate of shows starts at 10 o'clock with Philanthropy in Focus and Tommy D. Stephen Fry's Always Friday, closing out the day at 12 with Matthew Asbell and Intangify. Next week on the 28th, after Intangify, stay tuned for the launch of Mira Brancu and The Hard Skills. If you remember, she was on the show last week. I have gotten tremendous feedback from all of you who saw it, especially those of you on LinkedIn. I can't wait to watch it. I'm already a fan. But the thing is that we are expanding our network, and I look forward to catching all of you in a couple weeks. And when we return in August 17th is my target date, I'm going to bring back Jeff Dimitrak, and we're going to talk about an epilepsy show that has its own promises for a future. And so all of you, stay tuned for Danielle on Spotify. Make comfortable change in your life. Logan is saying it was nice to meet you too. And all of us are grateful that you continue to watch Frank About Health. I will see you in a couple weeks. And I'm signing off right now. Thanks for watching today's show, and take care, Danny. I'll speak with you soon.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Bye.